Driving home, a Maybach zoomed down the emergency lane and crashed right into my car. The driver leaped out, shouting and pointing a finger at me. "Are you blind? Cars making turns are supposed to yield to straight-moving traffic?" I frowned. "My car broke down. I'm supposed to be here."
"Oh wait, you're the one who violated traffic laws."
"Traffic laws," he scoffed, full of arrogance. "I am the law in Jaboro City. That piece of junk you're driving isn't worth one of my Maybach tires." He pulled out a baseball bat and smashed it against my car. Then he threatened to break my legs and demanded money. I smirked. "It might be a Volkswagen, but why don't you take a closer look at the special clearance permit on the windshield?" They turned to my car. It was reinforced with bulletproof and explosion-resistant materials. After the crash, only the exterior was dented. Nothing inside was harmed. Its Maybach, however, was totaled. Airbags deployed, front end crumpled. Furious that his luxury car couldn't handle a crash, he snapped. "Do you even know how much my car costs? It's worth more than your life." I caught the strong smell of alcohol on his breath. Everything clicked. He grabbed me. "Why am I wasting time on a broke loser like you? Start calling your family and beg for cash." The truth was, he'd been speeding down the emergency lane at over 120 miles per hour and never slowed down before hitting me. Now he was trying to twist the narrative. I laughed bitterly. "Borrow money? You're the one who should pay. You weren't even supposed to be in that lane. You saw me and didn't slow down. This is on you." When the traffic police arrive, they'll see that. Instead of getting angry, he smirked. "Do you know where I just came from? Traffic bureau chief's house. When the police show up, who do you think they'll side with?" He spat on the ground. My car drives in and out of the Jaboro municipal compound. "You're the first idiot who dared to block me." I stepped back in disgust. Out. He mistook it for fear and burst out laughing. A woman stepped out of the passenger seat, adjusting her clothes and glaring at me. "Honey, don't waste time on this lowlife. Guys like him get nervous around traffic cops, let alone the chief." I sniffed the alcohol again. Let's see who's nervous when the police arrive. I lit a cigarette and reached for my phone, but he snatched it from my hand. "People like me don't have time for scum like you. Call your family and beg." I'd just returned from military service. I didn't know the local big shots, but I was certain no one outranked my father. I shoved him aside and took back my phone. "I'll say it again. You're at fault. You're the one paying." His face turned red with rage. "Do you know who I am?" "Gabriel, second to command at Jenkins Construction." "How dare you touch me?" Other drivers gasped. "That guy's dangerous. I heard he once beat someone half to death just for bumping into him." I kept my tone cold. "You grab my phone first. Keep this up, and I'll call the police." "Who's paying who?" he shouted, grabbing the bat and charging at me. I stepped forward and caught his wrists mid-swing, twisted his arm, and pinned him to the ground. He shouted, "So what if you can fight? You think fists matter more than connections? I can make a single call and have people here in minutes." I let him go, not out of fear, but because I didn't want to waste time arguing. It was the holiday season, and I just wanted to get home. "Let's fix our cars and go," I muttered. His woman mistook my patience for weakness. "The last guy who crossed my man ended up dead. You're next." She helped him to his feet. He gave me a sinister smile and made a call. "Get everyone over here now." Truck drivers nearby looked worried. "Kid, you don't know who you're messing with. Apologize. You might not make it out of here." I stared Gabriel down. "I'd love to see how you try." He stormed back to his car. I got into mine and texted my dad to say I'd be late. A moment later, my car jolted violently. Gabriel's Maybach was ramming into the side of my car, pushing it toward the guardrail. One wheel was already hanging over the edge of a cliff. He rolled down his window. "Let's see how much you like dying." I immediately started the engine, trying to accelerate away. He pressed harder, the guardrail groaning under the pressure. "Gabriel, you're insane. This is attempted murder." He laughed. "That's slander. I'll sue you. My brakes failed, and you were blocking me. Don't worry. Once you're dead, I'll send your family $3,000 as a token of thanks." Clang. The railing buckled just as disaster loomed. My engine roared. To life, I floored the gas and broke free. Gabriel slammed his brakes and stopped, but a shard of glass flew up and embedded itself in my thigh. I gritted my teeth, pain searing through me. He stormed over, still shouting. I was trying to crash into you and you dodged. You almost got me killed. I nearly laughed. So you expected me to just sit there and die? He sneered. In Jaboro City, if I want someone to live, they live. If I want them dead, they die. Stared at him coldly. Gabriel, people are watching. There are cameras recording everything. Are you sure you want to keep going? He laughed. You think anyone here would dare report me? Look around. The crowd looked away. Some crushed their phones. And the cameras, he added, half of Jaboro, including this highway, was built by my company. If I want them off, they're off. He pulled out his phone. This is Gabriel from Jenkins Construction. Shut down all traffic lights and cameras in Jaboro. Seconds later, everything went dark. Someone nearby gasped. Oh my God, I was watching a live stream. Every light just went out. Gabriel wrapped his arm around his woman, proud and smug. You hear that? You can't afford to offend people like me, I scoffed. Upper class. You think owning a Maybach makes you elite? Then my ride must make me royalty. They burst out laughing. That garbage? It's worth what? 30 grand? I smiled. The vehicle isn't worth much, but the plate and clearance pass on this car. Priceless. It's my dad's official transport vehicle. My father is the governor of Hogan Province. Gabriel could shut down Jaboro, but my father could light up the whole province with one call. They had messed with the wrong person. Expression ice cold. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father's secretary. I dialed the number without hesitation. The phone rang only once before a composed voice answered. Secretary Wren speaking. It's me, I said, my tone calm but edged with steel. There's a situation on the JBORO expressway. Someone named Gabriel from Jenkins Construction just rammed my car, tried to push me off a cliff, and shut down the entire city's traffic surveillance system. There was a pause. Understood? Are you hurt? A shard of glass in my thigh. Nothing life-threatening, but he's still here. Laughing like he owns the province. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll inform the governor. Hold your position. Reinforcements will arrive in under 10 minutes. Do not engage further. I hung up without another word and looked back at Gabriel, who was now sipping champagne from a crystal glass handed to him by the woman at his side. He was grinning like he had already won, like my silence was submission. I leaned against the dented hood of my car and lit another cigarette. Gabriel caught sight of me and burst into laughter. You calling your mommy, little soldier boy? Trying to make a scene now? Go ahead, do your worst. I'll just get my lawyers to chew you up until you disappear. His voice was dripping with arrogance, and his woman giggled like she was watching a comedy show. But I stayed silent, not because I was afraid, because a storm was about to hit, and they were standing right in the eye of it. 10 minutes later, just as Secretary Wren promised, a black helicopter sliced through the sky and descended above. The expressway. Wind blasted across the scene. Everyone shielded their eyes. Gabriel's smug smile twitched. Out of the chopper descended a tall man in a navy coat. His presence sharp and commanding, he strode toward me with urgency. Young master. Kai, he said, bowing slightly. Governor Joe has been informed. He's on a secure line waiting. The provincial inspection team is being dispatched. Gasps echoed from the onlookers. Young master? Gabriel's expression turned pale like someone had just dumped a bucket of ice. Water over his head? What? What did you just call him? Gabriel asked, stepping forward, his voice cracking. The man didn't even glance at him. I took the secure phone and spoke directly to my father. Dad, it's Kai. The Jenkins family tried to kill me today. The silence on the other end was brief. Then, in a low, thunderous voice, that family has gotten too bold. I warned them last time. Click. That was all I needed. I handed the phone back and turned toward Gabriel. Still think this is about fists? I asked. Gabriel looked shaken, but tried to laugh it off. You're bluffing. You think you can just bring a helicopter and pretend to be someone important? I didn't reply. Instead, I stepped aside just as a fleet of black cars arrived. Out of them came uniformed officers, but not city police. These were provincial investigators, the kind that didn't answer to anyone in Jaboro. The crowd parted. Officer flashed a badge and pointed at Gabriel. Gabriel Jenkins, you are under investigation for obstruction of public safety, illegal tampering with municipal surveillance systems, attempted vehicular manslaughter, and criminal intimidation. What? Gabriel's voice cracked. He stepped back, his face twisted in disbelief. This is a mistake. I'm friends with the traffic bureau chief. Call him, he'll explain. But the officers didn't flinch. Two stepped forward and cuffed him. His woman screamed, clinging to him. But one of the agents simply moved her aside with a firm warning. Ma'am, interference will be considered obstruction of justice. No, he didn't do anything. He's a Jenkins. They own half the city. The officer turned to her, voice calm, but cold. And the province owns the law. Gabriel was being dragged toward the car when he snapped. Wait, I'll pay you. How much do you want? You think this is about money? I said, walking up to him. You thought I was some nobody in a Volkswagen? You thought money could erase anything? But you never stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, the man you tried to kill had more power than your entire family. He stared at me wide-eyed. I'll sue you, he hissed. Get out and sue you for everything you have. You won't get out, I said flatly. And then I looked at the crowd. Everyone here saw what happened. You all heard him admit to everything. But again, the crowd was silent, still afraid, still looking down, still pretending not to have seen a thing. I clenched my jaw. Then one voice spoke up. It was a child, maybe 10 years old, standing beside his father. Mommy, I saw it. That man tried to kill him. His mother gasped and tried to hush him, but it was too late. More voices joined. I recorded. Part of it, I was watching on the live stream. He said it out loud that he could make cameras disappear. One by one, the people who were once silent began to speak. Not because they were brave, but because they realized that silence would no longer protect them. Gabriel watched it unfold with a look of horror. His illusion of control crumbled in real time. That was when another car arrived. A sleek armored sedan with flags fluttering from the hood. From it stepped a man I hadn't seen in years. Tall, graying eyes that held both weight and wisdom. Governor Joe, my father. He looked around once, then walked toward Gabriel without a word. He stared down at the crumpled man on the ground. So you're the one who tried to kill my son? Gabriel tried to speak, but no sound came. The governor turned to the officers. I want a full investigation. I want every member of the Jenkins board reviewed. I want their contracts frozen and every surveillance system they installed audited immediately. He turned to me. Kai, go home. Your mother is waiting. I nodded. But as I walked back to my car, I knew it wasn't over. This was just the first crack. A family like the Jenkins didn't rise to power by folding quickly. They would retaliate. They would dig deeper, and I would be ready. As I limped into my car, glass still lodged in my leg, pain flaring through my body, I smiled. If they wanted war, then war they would get. By the next morning, every local news outlet was ablaze with headlines. Jenkins construction executive arrested after highway incident. Governor's son targeted in alleged assassination attempt, traffic surveillance. Shutdown traced to private network owned by Jenkins Group. Despite the media frenzy, I woke to silence. No calls, no texts, just the soft buzz of my leg wrapped in a pressure bandage and the dim light slipping through the curtains of my apartment. I sat up, ignoring the sting in my thigh, and looked at the encrypted phone beside me, the one my father had issued me years ago when he told me to keep a low profile after leaving the military. It blinked twice. One unread message. Unknown sender. They know it wasn't just an accident. Watch your back. This goes deeper than Gabriel. I stared at the message for a long time. It was unsigned, untraceable. The kind of thing that doesn't come from a civilian. Whoever sent it had access to classified channels, but I didn't need confirmation. I already knew. Gabriel wasn't acting alone. No ordinary man would dare weaponize the entire city's traffic system unless he believed someone even higher had his back. I limped over to the window, pulling the curtains aside. Outside, parked 2 stories down, was a nondescript black car, the same one that had tailed me for the past week. At first, I thought it was a routine surveillance team my father assigned for protection, but after last night, I wasn't so sure. I dialed Secretary Wren. "Sir," his voice was crisp, alert despite the early hour. "There's a second layer," I said. Gabriel wasn't alone. Someone with authority gave him that clearance, and it wasn't just because he's Jenkins' son. Wren's pause confirmed my suspicion. The governor suspects the same. He's requested a full audit of the city's internal systems, but several nodes have already been wiped. The logs are gone. Internal sabotage? Yes, but not just tech. We believe someone within the provincial government may be working with Jenkins. I clenched my fist. So, what's the plan? We need someone off the grid, someone who won't trigger. Alerts if they dig you want me to investigate? Merely relaying the message from the governor, Wren replied. You know how he speaks? Fine. Where do I start? There's a name, Wren said, lowering his voice. Elias Chen, Chief Engineer of Municipal Infrastructure. He disappeared 2 days ago. Same day, Jenkins acquired the emergency control override keys. Disappeared? Dead or hiding?
Unknown.
His wife reported him missing, but was silenced. An hour later, no trace of her either. Suspect both were taken. Taken, I repeated quietly, voice cold. Jenkins didn't just want control. They were erasing anyone who could expose how they got it. I'll find him, I said. Wren hesitated. One more thing. Be careful who you trust. The leak might be closer than you think. I hung up, pulled on my jacket, and stuffed my phone into the inner pocket. My thigh throbbed with every step, but pain was a familiar companion. I exited through the back stairwell, hopped into my second car, an old battered SUV with forged plates and no GPS. My real car was being towed for inspection, and I had no doubt that every digital trace of it was already flagged. The city looked normal on the surface, but underneath the calm, there was rot. Power lines rerouted, cameras angled just slightly wrong. Even the morning traffic lights flickered unnaturally, green for too long, then suddenly red without warning. Signs of digital corruption. Signs of someone rewriting the city's rules in real time. I headed toward Elias Chen's last known location, the old water treatment plant in District 4. According to the files Wren sent to my burner tablet, Chen had gone there for a routine inspection. The logs ended there. The area was supposed to be abandoned, shut down for urban redevelopment. But as I arrived, I saw something else entirely. 3 black vans were parked near the back entrance. One man stood watch at the gate, pretending to smoke, but his eyes were scanning the street. Professionals, whoever they weren't here for an inspection. I circled around and parked, out of sight, then made my way on foot through the alley. If Elias was still alive, this was my only shot at finding him. I slipped into the compound through a broken side window, careful not to disturb the shards. Inside, the place was pitch black. The scent of mold and iron filled the air, but beneath it, something else, something sharp, antiseptic, like a lab or a medical facility. I moved carefully through the corridor until I heard voices. Faint, muted, then the crackle of electricity. Pain screams. I stopped. There it was again. Someone was being interrogated. I crept closer, pressing myself against the cold concrete wall. Through a crack in the door, I saw a man tied to a chair, wires taped to his arms. His face bruised. Bloody, but his eyes alive. Elias Chen. They hadn't killed him yet. 2 men stood over him, one holding a stun baton, the other scrolling through a tablet. Tell us the fail-safe codes, one said. We already have half the grid. Give us the rest and you walk. You'll kill me either way, Elias rasped. Skip the game. The baton surged. His scream was short but brutal. I didn't have time to wait. I counted 2 inside, possibly more nearby. I pulled the tranquilizer pistol from my sleeve, aimed through the crack, and fired. First man down. Before the second could react, I kicked the door open and lunged forward. My fist hit his throat before he could scream, and he dropped. Elias looked up at me, confused, dazed. Who are you, friend? I said, cutting his restraints. Can you walk? He nodded barely. But as I pulled him up, a voice rang out through the intercom. Well done, young Master Kai. The voice was smooth, chillingly amused. I see you inherited your father's recklessness. Screen in the corner flickered on. A man in a suit, silver tie, eyes like daggers. I knew that face. Counselor Marcus Lin, head of provincial security, and my father's oldest political rival. You did all this? I asked quietly. He smiled. Oh no, I simply cleaned up after your little friend Gabriel made a mess. And now that you've interfered, he leaned closer to the camera, I'll have to consider you a threat as well. Then the screen went black. Gas hissed from the ceiling vents. Move! I shouted, dragging Elias out the door just as the gas flooded the chamber behind us. We burst through the hallway, sprinting for the emergency exit, alarms blaring behind us. I pushed him through the door and slammed it shut just as the compound exploded behind us. Flames roared into the sky. District 4 was now a crater. But Elias was alive, and now I had a name. Marcus Lin. He thought he could silence the truth, but he forgot one thing. I wasn't just the governor's son. I was a soldier, and I never lose track of my enemies. Elias and I sat in the back of a safe house buried beneath one of the governor's unused agricultural facilities 30 kilometers outside Jaboro City. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the cup of tea I had prepared, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds, as if afraid Marcus Lin would burst through it. He had every reason to fear. Counselor Lin didn't just command political influence. He operated in the gray zone between government, military, and corporate power. Everyone in the province knew he was untouchable, or thought he was. Not anymore. I slid a tablet across the table toward Elias. I need everything, I said. Backup logs, infrastructure codes, the network architecture, everything Marcus Lin's people tried to get from you. Elias flinched, but nodded slowly. They want more than surveillance control, he said hoarsely. They want override access to the entire provincial emergency system, power grids, floodgates, even the civil alert signals. My eyes narrowed. That's not consolidation. That's preparation. They're planning something. Elias nodded, his eyes filled with dread. They call it Protocol Winter. What is it? I don't know, but there's a list. Names. He pulled a crumpled drive from inside his boot and handed it to me. I copied it before they caught me, but I didn't dare open it, I think. I think your name is on it, too. I plugged the drive into my encrypted tablet. Screen lit up, and a single directory appeared. Civilian Red List Tier 1. I opened the file, and there were 38 names. Some of them were journalists. Some were ex-military. Some were civic engineers like Elias. One was the current director of public health. Another was an economist known for his analysis on emergency fund diversions. And right there, number 16, Kai Jo. I stared at it in silence. Protocol Winter wasn't just a power grab, it was a purge. And I had been on their radar long before the expressway. Elias leaned forward, his voice cracking. They said Tier 1 targets would be eliminated if they didn't submit. Submit to what? Then I saw it. It's one more file buried at the bottom. Winter. Manifest V3.6. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't a plan for emergency governance. It was a privatization protocol, an entire simulation model for collapsing provincial civil authority and replacing it with a paramilitary structure operated under a private entity, Jenkins-Lin Alliance. Jenkins Construction would provide the physical infrastructure and weapons. Lin's operatives would supply the logistics, cybernetics, and enforcement. The end result? A controlled collapse of democratic governance under the guise of an emergency response, complete with martial law, biometric checkpoints, and a citizen scoring system. They didn't just want power. They wanted ownership of the people, and they were days, maybe hours away from initiating it. I pushed away from the table and stood. This goes to the top, I said. If they pull the trigger on this, not even my father will be able to stop the fallout in time. Elias swallowed hard. So, what do? We stop pretending we're in a negotiation, I said. It's war now. Back in the city, surveillance systems flickered back online, but not the official ones. These were different, black systems encrypted. On private servers, with no state-level authentication, Jenkins Construction had deployed its own surveillance grid, and no one stopped them because no one dared to. I moved underground, switched SIM cards, abandoned my personal contacts, left behind my government ID. I became a ghost in my own city. My first objective was clear: find out how deep this went. I returned to an old contact, Ashira Lee. She ran a logistics firm on paper. In reality, she ran a civilian intelligence network built from ex-military hackers, journalists, and smugglers. She owed me a favor from a rescue op long ago in Port Thalassa. Her office was a basement hidden beneath a noodle shop. Knocked twice, paused, then once. The door creaked open. "You look like hell," she said. "Feels about right. What is it? This time, drugs, weapons, or treason?" I dropped the drive on her desk. She plugged it in and read the files silently. Her face hardened. "Tell me this isn't real." "It's real." She exhaled slowly and leaned back. "They're planning a full lockdown. Digital infrastructure, civil defense, media, transportation, everything. Once activated, Protocol Winter will seize all public institutions. Under emergency security regulation, and no one will question it because they'll use a fake disaster as justification." My jaw tightened. "And the red list." She looked me dead in the eye. "They've already started." I sat back. "How many?" "For confirmed disappearances, 2 found dead in accidents. 3 are missing. You're the only one they failed to eliminate." "So far?" Ashira swiveled her chair toward a monitor. "There's one more thing, look at this." She played a video feed. It showed Counselor Lin entering my father's compound. I froze. "When was this? This morning?" "Private visit, no announcement, no staff present, and the governor's official calendar doesn't list the meeting." That was impossible. My father hated Lin. He had publicly humiliated him during last year's anti-corruption tribunal. Less and less someone inside my father's own security unit had turned, lest the purge had already reached the governor's circle. "I need to talk to my father," I said. Ashira grabbed my wrist. "That's exactly what they want. He's either being watched or he's already compromised." "No, he would never. I'm not saying he's turned. I'm saying they might be using him as bait." Silence fell between us. Then I spoke quietly. "What if I went to him without being seen?" Ashira raised an eyebrow. "Then you're a bigger idiot than I remember. I'm serious. If I can slip into the compound through the old South Irrigation Channel, I can reach his private study. He'll know. I'm not part of Lin's crew. You sure?" "No, but I have to try." That night, I moved like a shadow through the governor's estate. Underground tunnels from an era when war was still fought with blades instead of firewalls. My old passage, buried and long forgotten, had been sealed for years. But I still remembered. The code. The keypad blinked green. I moved through the maintenance shaft, carefully bypassing heat sensors and pressure triggers. My time in special operations hadn't been for nothing. Finally, I reached the study. Lights on, curtains closed. Inside, my father stood by the fireplace. I opened the hidden panel and stepped in. He turned around slowly. "Kai, father." We stared at each other for a long moment, then I spoke. "You know what they're planning?" He nodded. "I do." My heart sank. "Then why did you let Lin in here?" "I needed to see how far he was willing to go," my father said. "I've been feeding him false intelligence for a week." My eyes widened. "What? You're baiting him?" "Yes." "But I didn't expect him to go after you so soon. He tried to kill me on the expressway," I said. "And now he's silencing the red list." "I know. Then why haven't you shut him down?" My father looked tired. "Because if I move too soon, half the province will fall into chaos. Marcus Lin has infiltrated the judiciary, the infrastructure bureau, and even the national defense ministries. Local outpost. One wrong move, and we lose more than just political control. We lose the people." I clenched my fists. Then let me do it. He looked at me sharply. I've been underground. I've seen their files. I've seen their plans. I can go where you can't. No one expects the governor's son to vanish. But if Kaijo disappears, a ghost can move freely. My father's eyes narrowed. What are you asking me for, Kai? Sanction me, I said. I want full authority, an official. No paper trail, no rank, just access to the weapons vault. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just walked over to the cabinet and pulled out a black case. Inside it were 2 keys and a single ID tag. Operator status code Vermilion. He handed them. To me, you'll be hunted by both sides. I already am. He closed the case. Then go. And just like that, I walked out of the study, into the darkness, into war. Because if Marcus Lin wanted a province of silence and submission, he'd have to bury me first. The warehouse was silent except for the faint hum of generators. Rows of shipping containers loomed in the dark like steel tombs. Somewhere in this labyrinth was the first artery in Marcus Lin's operation, a data hub disguised as an import, logistics checkpoint, and I had 38 minutes to disable it before Lin's next update sweep reached it. Ashira's intel had been precise. This location funneled captured metadata through dummy corporations to a private uplink near the southern coast. If I could extract the root core, or even just clone its protocols, we'd have our first untraceable proof, something to put in the hands of the National Anti-Corruption Task Force, something even Lin couldn't spin or erase. I crouched behind a container and adjusted the signal jammer on my wrist. The air shimmered briefly as it blanked all short-range sensors within 50 meters. Then I moved. Inside the second row, I found what I was looking for. A heat signature. Faint but focused. A single engineer remained on site, likely monitoring the upload logs. I entered through the back panel. The room was cold. The engineer barely had time to stand before I silenced him with a dart to the neck. Not fatal, just sleep. I dragged him behind the server stacks and accessed the terminal, and then I saw it. The data wasn't just infrastructure control or surveillance. They were experimenting with something far worse. The live feed flickered open. Men strapped to medical beds, injectors pumping into their veins, overlays flashing neural response times and biometric failure rates. Oh, they weren't just building a surveillance state. They were building obedience protocols, behavioral conditioning, real-time neural response tracking. They were using unwilling citizens to perfect it. My stomach twisted. One of the patients was a woman. Couldn't have been more than 25. The data listed her occupation, freelance journalist. She had disappeared 6 weeks ago. This is what happened to dissidents. This was protocol winter. I extracted the files and uploaded them to Ashira's remote server through an off-grid satellite relay. But as I turned to leave, my screen flashed red. Warning, external access detected. They knew I was here. I didn't even have time to curse. Before the roof exploded inward, steel shattered, or a flashbang detonated midair. Pain lanced through my skull. I hit the ground, rolled, and pulled my sidearm. 6 black armored units dropped in through the smoke. No insignia, no language, not police, not military Lins, private enforcers. One rushed me with a baton, crackling with voltage. Lowe slammed his knees sideways and yanked him into another attacker. 2 more came from the flanks. I drew a blade and spun through them, cutting across tendons, disabling, not killing. They didn't deserve mercy, but I still had a point to prove. The 6th man was smarter. He waited, held back, rifle trained on my head. I looked at him. He hesitated, and I recognized him. Iron Veil. We had trained together at the academy. Top of his class, loyal, disciplined. But now he was here on Lin's payroll. Iron, I said quietly. His finger twitched. You shouldn't have come back, he said. You joined him. He didn't answer. Then he spoke. Lin showed me the future. Stability, control, no more chaos, no more failed systems, just order through. Terror through strength? He's using you, I said. He's experimenting on people. I know. His voice didn't even waver. That shook me more than the stun grenades. He knew. He had seen it all. And he accepted it. Really think that future is worth becoming a monster? His eyes narrowed. No, but I'd rather be a monster with purpose than a pawn of a crumbling system. He raised his rifle, and then he hesitated again. You've got 20 seconds. After that, I'll assume you're a threat. I didn't need 20. I slipped a flash charge from my belt, activated the delay, and tossed it behind a rack. Iron's gaze flicked toward the motion. I dashed left, vaulted over a support beam, and blasted through the side emergency door. The warehouse exploded in alarms behind me. SUV roared to life as I climbed in and peeled out into the night. Sirens howled behind me, but I had the data. Now it was war on every front. Ashira received the dump 15 minutes later. Her voice over the secure channel was tense. You need to see this now. I parked inside a derelict parking garage 3 levels below street access and synced to her encrypted feed. She pulled up the files. I went deeper into the core, she said. These behavior codes, they're not theoretical. They've already been deployed. Where? Ashira's face went pale. Public schools, hospitals, transit terminals. They're using passive biometric scanners to rate and categorize civilians in real time. People who fall below the obedience threshold get flagged and tracked. Some vanish the next day. I stared at the screen. Footage played. An old woman being stopped at a subway checkpoint. Her card denied. 2 men in uniform guided her away gently. She smiled at them. It all looked normal until she was gone. And her ID record wiped from the system 20 minutes later. Ashira said. People vanish without panic. No arrests, no violence, just removed. I closed my eyes. Lin wasn't planning an uprising. He was preparing a quiet reset, erase the disobedient, reprogram the rest, and present it all as progress. We need to bring this to the press, Ashira said, to the world. I shook. My head, no one will believe it. Not without context. We have to show them what it means. We have to force Lin to reveal his hand. I looked out the window at the city skyline, then down at the steel locket hanging from my neck. Inside it, the last message my mother ever recorded before she died in a staged accident blamed on mechanical failure, an accident Lin had orchestrated. To pressure my father into silence during a political negotiation, it had never been about power. It was personal. He wants a trigger, I said quietly. Let's give him one. 2 nights later, the governor stood before the cameras to deliver a press statement. Crisis control over the surveillance breach. I watched from a rooftop opposite the provincial media building. Security was tight, but I wasn't here to stop him. I was here to hijack the broadcast. Ashira's tech team was synced through a drone relay hovering 400 meters overhead. When the governor stepped onto the stage, the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The governor adjusted his notes. 7. Ashira's voice crackled. Signal uplink. Ready. On your mark. 3, 2. I pressed the switch and the screen behind the governor changed. No longer a seal of the province, but a video feed. Grainy, brutal. A man strapped to a table, screaming, injected with chemicals, his vitals spiking, people in lab coats recording it all. Gasps echoed through the audience. Security rushed the governor, but he held up a hand. Wait, I spoke through the speakers. My name is Kaijo. I was almost killed on the expressway last week. I was followed, targeted, hunted, and now I know why. I listed names, showed documents, showed biometric tracking codes in the red list, and I ended with one sentence. Councillor Marcus Lin is no longer fit to hold office. The city erupted. Lin's office issued a denial within 5 minutes, but it was too late. The storm had already begun, and I vanished into it because now I wasn't just fighting for truth. I was fighting for the soul of a nation. The city did not sleep for 3 days. After the broadcast, chaos spread through every level of the province. Social media exploded with the footage. Fragments of the red list and speculation that a silent purge had already begun. Protesters swarmed the municipal square in front of the provincial council. The Jenkins construction logo was torn from the front of its glass building and set ablaze by a furious crowd chanting for justice. But not everyone was cheering. The deeper the public dug, the more they realized how embedded Marcus Lynn's system had become... Transportation slowed as workers went on strike. Banks halted services after security algorithms flagged mass account movements as suspicious. The biometric checkpoint system crashed entirely, triggering lockdowns in hospitals and schools. The government was teetering, and Counselor Lynn, he vanished for 72 hours. There was no trace of him. No statements, no press appearances. His estate was empty. His official staff fled, or were arrested. It was like he had never existed. Except I knew better. He was preparing his counterattack, and I was running out of time. Shira's new safe house was buried beneath the foundation of an old theater slated for demolition. She had relocated all operations underground. 4 monitors blinked with surveillance data, intercepted radio chatter, and emergency signal pings. I stared at the feed from the counselor's residence. Still empty. Ashira nodded. Even the backup generators are cold. Whoever's managing his defense net is keeping it decentralized now. He's gone fully ghost protocol, meaning he's not planning to talk his way out of this. She didn't need to answer. My burner phone buzzed once, then again. An encrypted message blinked on screen. If you want the rest of the red list, meet me. Alone, no weapons. Pier 17, midnight. Come alone, or it dies with me. No sender, no trace. But the words chilled me because they weren't unfamiliar. It was the same phrasing used by a contact from long ago. Someone who once served in my unit. Someone I had thought was dead. Only one person wrote like that. Read. I arrived at Pier 17. At 23:58, the docks were quiet, cloaked in fog and shadow. Cargo containers lined the pier like silent tombstones. A single light flickered near the end of the boardwalk. I kept my hands in view. No weapons, just the drive necklace around my neck. He stepped out of the shadow, slowly limping. His face was leaner than I remembered, his beard rough, but his eyes were the same, calculating, ice cold. Didn't think you'd come, Reed said, voice low. You're supposed to be dead, he chuckled. Funny, so were you. Then we both turned up like ghosts. I glanced around. He sent the message. He nodded and tossed me a small drive. It's the rest of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 targets. Lynn's complete playbook, his activation orders, even contingency plans. If the governor retaliates. I caught the drive and stared at him. Why give it to me? Because you're the only one dumb enough to keep fighting him face to face, Reed said. And because I owe you? You worked for him? I infiltrated his systems after the military cut us loose. I needed cover. I thought I could slow him down from inside. You disappeared for 2 years, Reed. I thought they buried you. They tried. But it was someone else's grave I walked out of, narrowed my eyes. Why now? Reed stepped closer, because Lynn isn't trying to survive anymore. He's trying to finish the plan before anyone else stops him. He handed me a second drive. This one's worse. I plugged it into my tablet. Video loaded. It wasn't infrastructure data. It was a live feed of a bunker. Inside, 2 people sat bound and gagged. One of them was Secretary Wren, the other, my breath caught. My mother. She was alive. My mother was alive, and Lynn had her. I almost dropped the tablet. Reed's voice turned grim. They've been using her as leverage against your father. She's been missing for 5 years, presumed dead. But she was never killed, just erased. Hidden. I turned to him. Where is that bunker? I don't know. But I know what it's connected to. He pointed to the upper corner of the screen. Company. Logo Nemian Industries. A name I hadn't heard in years. Nemian? I whispered. That biotech firm was shut down after the mind modulation trials were exposed. Reed shook his head. No, they just went deeper underground. Lynn bought them out through a shell company under Jenkins. Of course. Of course. The neural obedience. Protocols. The soft erasures. The disappearances. They weren't theoretical. They were field-tested on my mother. On Wren. On thousands. Ashira's voice buzzed in my earpiece. We found something. Say it, I replied, still on the screen. Nemian has a hidden research hub listed as a water treatment facility. It's 60 kilometers south of the city, built inside a cliffside power reserve. No traffic in or out for weeks. All data relays go through high-orbit bounce protocols. I turned to read, "I'm going in." He raised an eyebrow. "You'll need more than just bullets." "I know," I said. "I need them to know I'm coming." He didn't smile, but he nodded. Before I left, I went to see my father. He was in his office, face haggard, watching old footage of my mother smiling during a press tour 15 years ago. "I have reason to believe she's alive," I said. His hands clenched. "Where?" "Nemean's black site. South Cliff sector. Going to bring her back." He stood slowly. "Kai, if you do this." "No." He stared at me for a long time, then opened his drawer. Inside was a sealed envelope. He handed it to me. "What is it?" "Something Lin fears more than death," said a confession. One he made to me 10 years ago when I first considered trusting him. I opened the envelope. Inside was a recording. Lin's voice describing the origins of Protocol Winter. The deals, the bribes, the testing, the human subjects. His belief that fear was the only way to shape order from chaos. It was enough to destroy him, but not enough to stop him. Not until I found that bunker and burned it to the ground. I went alone. No comes, no backup. The Nemean facility was buried inside the cliffs, invisible from satellites. I entered through a drainage passage near the base of the rock, bypassing the electromagnetic security lattice using a stolen access ring Reed had provided. Inside, it was silent. Too silent. I found them on level 3. Ren was barely conscious, but alive. My mother, her eyes opened when she saw me, and she smiled. "Kai," she whispered. "I'm here." I cut her bonds, but then the alarms blared. Lin's voice filled the speakers, touching really. "But you're too late." The doors slammed. Gas hissed. But I had already triggered the fallback sequence. 2 thermal detonators planted near the server. Cores ignited. The entire west wing collapsed inward. Out. Smoke filled the corridor. Lin's voice faded into static. I carried my mother in one arm, read over my shoulder. By the time I emerged, Ashira's drone was waiting. He flew out over the cliffside as the facility collapsed behind us. But as the fire roared below us, I knew it wasn't over because Lin hadn't been there. He was still out there somewhere, watching, planning, and in 3 days, the council would vote on emergency powers. If he succeeded, he wouldn't need protocols anymore. He'd have law, and I would be branded a traitor unless I stopped him first. 3 days, that was all we had. 3 days before the emergency. Powers vote would take place inside the provincial council chamber, an event that on the surface was framed as a necessary legislative response to the chaos currently unfolding. The riots, the surveillance failures, the terrorist attack on the water facility, all manufactured by Lin, all blamed on me. I had become public enemy number 1. Officially, I was now a fugitive, a rogue element threatening national security. Councillor Marcus Lin had positioned himself as the reluctant savior, the one man strong enough to restore order in a province spiraling out of control. It was political theater, and I knew the finale he was planning, the emergency powers. Bill passed. Lin would seize temporary command of the provincial enforcement network with jurisdiction override for infrastructure, media, health, and civil defense. Temporary on paper, permanent in practice. After that, there'd be no turning back. No courts, no oversight, no rescue, just silence. I sat in the shadows of Ashira's secondary command post, an old printing facility buried beneath a decommissioned metro tunnel. My mother lay sleeping nearby under medical supervision, still recovering. Ren was awake but weak, feeding us what he could remember of Nemean's internal layouts and Lin's strategic patterns. And me? I was quiet, watching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment, because I wasn't going to stop the vote. I was going to hijack it. The council chamber was a fortress now. Layers of biometric locks, retinal scanners, voice print confirmations. Dozens of armed guards patrolled every quarter. Media access was strictly controlled, and all digital signals were scrubbed at the source. No live streams, no outside communication, just a curated press release written before the vote had even begun. Lin's narrative was already in place. Kai Joe, the disgraced son of the governor, turned radical insurgent. Kidnapper, saboteur, enemy of peace. But there was one weakness in the plan, name Lynn never accounted for. Lena Jo, my mother. She had once been the heart of the province. Beloved, intelligent, respected across party lines. Her supposed death in a car crash 5 years ago had broken more than just our family. It had left a gaping wound in the public's trust. And now she was alive. The world just didn't know it yet. Yet, the morning of the vote, I put on the uniform, not my military gear. That would draw too much attention. Instead, I wore the ceremonial protocol suit of a provincial aide, complete with forged clearance credentials, keyed to a former staffer, who had disappeared months ago. Another early casualty of Lynn's silent war. Shira's tech team synced my heartbeat to a false biometric signature. Reed fed me updated corridor maps from his side channel. By the time I entered the administrative wing, I looked exactly like what I wasn't. A loyal functionary arriving to assist the transition of power. I moved quickly up to flights, left at the security node, then through a side entrance into the press mezzanine above the main chamber. It was packed with observers. Dozens of delegates sat below, murmuring among themselves. The governor's chair was empty. He wouldn't arrive until the official opening. But Lynn was already there, standing tall in his gray suit, smiling like a king, surveying his coronation. He didn't recognize me at first, not in this uniform, not with my hair cut short and my stance humbled like any other staffer. But that didn't matter because I wasn't here to confront him. I was here to break him. At precisely 9 o'clock, the chamber silenced. The governor entered. No guards flanked him, just quiet dignity and a sealed envelope in his hand. The speaker struck his gavel. Motion for emergency power transfer is now in session. Lynn stepped forward, his voice smooth and righteous. Distinguished members of the council, I come before you not to demand control, but to restore order. This great province has suffered under sabotage, lies, and terrorism. I ask for your vote, not out of ambition, but out of duty. Murmurs of approval echoed. The speaker nodded. Present your final remarks, then we shall vote. Lynn turned to the governor. Sir, with your blessing. But the governor held up a hand. I have a counterstatement. Lynn's eyes narrowed. This isn't procedure. The governor ignored him. He opened the envelope, then looked up. My wife is alive. Gasps rang out through the chamber. The governor continued, voice steady. She's been missing for 5 years. I was told she died in an accident. That was a lie. She was held captive, drugged, silenced because she discovered the existence of a black ops program created by this man. He pointed directly at Lynn. The chamber exploded into chaos. Lynn raised both hands. This is absurd. Radicals. But then the feed changed. Shira's signal cut into the council's private channel. Every monitor lit up with the same image. Lena Jo alive, speaking directly into the camera. My name's Lena Jo. I was kidnapped. I was drugged. I was erased from this province by men working under Marcus Lynn. I watched as they turned civilians into experiments. I watched as they built a system not for peace but for control. Silence fell like thunder. No, Lynn whispered. He turned and saw me, standing in the press mezzanine, still in uniform, but no longer hiding. You, he growled. Me, I said, and all of them. I pressed a button on my wrist and 30 council members' data pads lit up. Documents, footage, every classified detail we had compiled. Backup copies, signed confessions, black site coordinates, the entire system. This isn't a rebellion, I said. It's a reckoning. Lynn lunged for the governor, but Reed was faster. He appeared from the floor below, tackled Lynn mid-step, and brought him to the ground with a single blow. Guards swarmed, not Lynn's men, ours, the ones we'd flipped, the ones who'd seen too much and stayed quiet too long. Lynn thrashed, screamed, roared. You think this changes anything? I built the grid. I own it. I stepped up to him, lowered myself to his level. No, I said, you just infected it. He bared his teeth. Then you'll have to kill me because I will never stand trial. Never. I leaned in close. You won't have to, because just then Ashira's voice buzzed in my ear.
News.
Just broke. Lynn's foreign accounts were seized. Interpol issued a warrant 5 minutes ago. He's no longer protected. Reed dragged him away. The speaker banged his gavel again. The vote is cancelled. An emergency investigation has been launched. Till further notice, all transitional powers are suspended. And just like that, it was over. It's not with an explosion, not with a firefight, but with truth and exposure. Later that evening, I stood on the rooftop of the council hall, watching the sun sink behind the skyline. Reed joined me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. We had survived. My mother was safe. My father had reclaimed his power without, becoming a tyrant. The province would heal slowly, painfully, but it would. And I had one last mission, because in the final logs we'd recovered, there was one more name. A financier. The man who funded Namian's rebirth. The one Lynn answered to. He lived beyond the borders of Hogan Province. Farther, deeper, and if I didn't stop him, he would build another Lynn, another system, another purge. Leaving again? Reed asked. I nodded. I have too. Reed sighed. You always do. I smiled faintly. Someone has to keep the lights on. The jet sliced through the clouds like a silent blade, leaving no trail behind. Inside, I sat alone. No Ashira, no Reed, no backup. This mission wasn't sanctioned. It wasn't even official. It was personal. The final name on the recovered logs wasn't a politician nor a soldier. He didn't appear on any government registry. No photos, no official birth certificate. Just one code name tied to every phase of Protocol Winter: Monarch. A myth, a ghost. The one Marcus Lynn called only when systems failed. Ashira traced a fragment of Monarch's digital trail to a private research island off the coast of Genkai Strait. An abandoned naval facility reactivated under the cover of environmental research. No incoming traffic, no outgoing communications. Just one long-range satellite beacon that blinked once every 6 hours. I was heading straight into its heart. Alone, I arrived under darkness. Waves struck the jagged cliffs as the jet hovered low and deployed a single drop capsule. I landed hard, rolled once, then scrambled to cover. The island was silent, too silent. Through my night optics, I scanned the perimeter. Old bunkers, watchtowers, rusted gates. But inside the command hub, a single light glowed. I made my way. Through the weeds and stone, bypassing pressure sensors and infrared trip lines. The technology here wasn't just military grade. It was old-world black-budget stuff I had only seen once back in a hidden NATO base that no longer existed. When I reached the main facility, I entered through an emergency hatch melted by time. The hall smelled of oil, iron, and something else, something sterile. At the center of the compound, I found a door, steel, sealed, marked only with the letter. It opened when I approached, as if it had been waiting for me. He was seated in the center of the room, surrounded by screens projecting data in all directions. Old, white-haired, but alert, his eyes sharp and lucid. He didn't flinch when I entered. Lokaijo, you know my name. I knew your name. Before you were born, I kept my gun pointed at him. You're Monarch. He smiled faintly. Monarch is just a name, an idea. The real work was done long before I existed. I simply inherited it. Who are you? He leaned back in his chair. I was a systems engineer for a failed world, a world that thought people could govern themselves. Then I watched that world burn. In slow motion, I stepped closer. You created Protocol Winter. I refined it, tested it. Marcus Lynn, he was a prototype. Ambitious, arrogant, disposable, but he gave me what I needed. Data, human patterns, emotional breaks, neurological fail, points. I clenched my jaw. You experimented on civilians.
Ow.
He shrugged. No more than your government does when it releases economic stress packages and observes the behavioral impact. This was different only in scale. I circled him, trying to see how he controlled the system. The wires, the antennas, the pulse, routers, Everything in the room fed into one terminal. Why the neural obedience protocols? I asked. Why not just use fear? Fear is temporary, he said softly. Obedience can be inherited. Then he turned to me. You're not here to kill me. No. You're here for what I have. The rest of the names. The third phase of protocol, winter. I hesitated. What third phase? Lin was the second generation. Brutal, obvious. But the next iteration doesn't use violence. It uses convenience, efficiency, predictive safety. He tapped the screen and it lit up with a simulation. Perfect society. No crimes, no protests, no inequality. But also no freedom, no dissent, no choice, just smiles and silence. This is the future they'll choose, he said. It's not because I forced them to, but because it's easier. I stepped forward and shot the terminal. Sparks exploded. Monarch didn't move. That was a backup node, he said. You've done nothing. Then I'll burn it all. He turned to face me fully. Can't stop this by killing me. It's already in the algorithm, in the design. I raised my weapon. I'm not going to kill you. He blinked. No, I'm going to lock you in here and let the world see what you built. Let them see you beg when your oxygen runs out. When your lights flicker, when your silence finally turns into screams. He laughed, a poetic ending. No, I said, a necessary one. I turned toward the door. But just before I left, he said, one last thing. You think you've won, Kaijo, but freedom is a temporary glitch. The system always corrects itself. I didn't answer because I knew the truth. The system only corrects itself if you let it. 3 months later, Jaboro City was rebuilding. The governor was still in office, but now under constant oversight by an independent civilian ethics committee. The biometric systems were dismantled. Jenkins' construction had collapsed. Counselor Lin, awaiting trial, remained in isolation. Had disappeared again, off to clean up another infection in another part of the world. Ashira had turned the intelligence network into a transparency organization run by volunteers and whistleblowers. And my mother, she began speaking publicly again, telling the story, rebuilding trust. She was stronger than ever. As for me, I left. Not because I had to, but because I knew the next fight wouldn't wait. The third phase was still out there. Whispers of new investors, new names, new masks, behind the same old plan. But this time, I'd be ready because I wasn't a soldier anymore. I wasn't a governor's son. I was the firewall. The last line between obedience and freedom. And my name.